I got to do my funky little ongoing live dance.
I love that. I'm going to start doing that.
Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of The Shadow Side with Safrianna. I am so delighted to be joined today by the Passionistas sisters from the Passionistas Project, Amy and Nancy Harrington. Absolutely incredible human beings. I can't wait to have this conversation and to let you get to know them some here. And yeah, we're just going to be talking about creating inclusive communities today and some of the shadow sides that come with that. So, Amy, if you would be so kind as to introduce yourself, please.
Sure. I'm Amy Harrington, and I am the co-founder of the Passionistas Project, along with my gorgeous and wonderful sister, Nancy, who I'm realizing we look like we're opposites of, like we're a mirror image today with our bangs. I had a long career in the entertainment industry, and I left that so that I could work with Nancy, and we've been working together for 20-something years, and we have created an inclusive community where women from all backgrounds can come and feel safe and share their stuff and be messy and not have to feel like everything has to be perfect all the time. So I'm excited about this conversation today.
So excited to have you here. And I love that, being able to talk about some of the imperfections of all of this is so important.
Yes.
Nancy, would you be so kind as to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Nancy Harrington. I'm her other half. We share a brain. Literally, it's crazy. Well, I guess not literally, but
figuratively and demonstrably, literally.
Yes. I also had a career in entertainment. I had a theater company, and I worked at an Academy advertising agency that did the Academy Award campaigns for Miramax. And Amy and I quit our jobs at the same time to go down a long and winding road together, and ended up in this world of the Passionistas, and couldn't think of a better place to be.
And thank goodness that you've built the space. You know, I'm a very vocal, happy member of the Passionistas Sisterhood on the Circle platform. I think it is just a wonderful community. And I'm always, whenever I meet a woman or gender nonconforming, trans, feminine, whatever person who would fit there, I'm like, come on over, because this is the place to be for actual inclusive community. And I say that as a person who has tried to build Living Lunas as a very inclusive community. Mm-hmm. But there are many pitfalls along the way to building communities right now, because people don't know how to communicate, generally speaking. It's really not a thing that we've been taught. And so we try to come into communities and we create a lot of rupture, but there's not a lot of room for repair.
Yeah.
Whereas I've really seen you all really foster that ability to repair, as well as have hard conversations. So first of all, I just want to rewind. What was it like being in the entertainment industry and the communities there? Were they healthy communities?
Oh, Safrianna. Oh.
See, I know how to put
healthy
this
is definitely not a word that comes to mind.
Yeah, I think that they should be held up as the model for inclusivity and healthy communities. Should I answer that one, Nan?
Sure, you go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I had an interesting experience because I was a 27-year-old woman who became vice president of post-production and visual effects for WarnerBros. So I was very young. I was usually the only woman or one of the only women in high-powered situations, rooms and meetings and on sets. And I thought it was normal because I got right into that industry when I got out of college. And my mission was, I have to be one of the guys. I have to get them to not even think about the fact that I'm the girl in the room. And if somebody draws attention to the fact that I'm a girl, I am going to freak out, because then I'm going to be set back 5 years. Like one time, just this popped into my head recently during a conversation. I was out to lunch with a director and a couple of my colleagues, male colleagues. And this woman, total stranger, came up to me at the end of her lunch and said, I just need to know where you got your hair cut. And I was mortified, and I felt like, oh, I've worked for 7 years to like get these guys not to think about the fact that I have long hair and that I
Right.
get cut and that I'm a girl. And they didn't think twice about it after she left the table. But for me, it was like the most devastating experience because now I was not one of the guys. So it was on one level it was great. They did treat me like one of them. I took a long time with some of them, but they treated me really well. I never had a bad situation. I never had a Me Too moment, any of that. But it was the only way to be included was to conform to who I thought, how can I be the guy in the room too?
Mm. Yeah. Wow. That conformity piece is huge here. And I'm sure we're going to get into some of that today because that is the kicker for a
Mhm.
lot of our issues right now is
Right.
people trying to conform.
Yeah.
But to have to condense ourselves into these like small little box facsimiles of ourselves, like it's not even who we really are, it's just like a little carbon copy of what society wants us to be, and trying to fit into that again doesn't build community
No.
because communities are full of all kinds of different kinds of people.
Mm-hmm.
Cults, different story. Communities, all kinds of different people. So,
Yes.
I'm curious, coming out of that industry, what really inspired the two of you to like go for building the kind of community you've now built? What was the reasoning or the the heart drive behind that you were like, okay, completely scrapping these careers, we're building a community? It was a leap of faith. What
Yeah.
took, what
It
caused you
was
to
a leap
take that leap?
It was a leap of faith, and I can sum it up in 2 words that I hate to have pass my lips, but Donald Trump. When Donald Trump was running and everything was crazy, we're like, "What do we" the first time, "What do we do? How do we do this?" And then the Me Too movement happened, and then the Time's Up movement happened, and we were like, "We need to do something to help women. This is, there we can't just sit idly by and watch this happen." So,
Mhm.
we weren't exactly sure what that was, and we were at the time we were celebrity interviewers. We've done 1,500 interviews on the red carpet and archival interviews, and so we were like, well, let's use our skills. Let's interview women. So we started a podcast, and that has led us down this road to build the community. But as we were starting the podcast and talking, one of the things we did when we started it was we asked every woman to nominate somebody else to be on the podcast. So it led us down this incredible road to women that we never would have met ordinarily, and really opened our eyes to what's going on out there in the world, because we did come from a place of privilege and not always exposed personally to these stories. And so the more we heard the stories, the more we were like, okay, podcast is not enough. So we started our annual Women's Equality Summit, and that's where we really started focusing on bringing women from marginalized communities together so that they could share their stories, because there was no place for them to have a voice. And so we just wanted to give them the platform to tell their stories and to talk to one another and find the common ground, see the things that they're not experiencing, that the other women in communities experience, but also just come together to support one another and lift each other up.
Mm.
And
And
last
so
year we brought that even further by making the online community.
I was blown away when I recently realized you had just hit your year anniversary of the actual community, because again, I was introduced to you through the podcast nomination.
Yeah.
A friend of mine was on your podcast and was like, you need to meet them. And you all were busy for like a year, I think, almost.
Right, because it was when Nancy was
That's
sick.
when I
and
was
so
sick.
Oh
we
my
had
gosh,
delayed
yeah.
everything.
And so there was this chunk of time where we didn't communicate, and then you all came back in with the I guess the community had just kind of really gotten up and going. And then it took a little while for me to fully get involved. But you've built such an incredible thing. And, you know, Nancy, what you just spoke to about helping people find the common ground.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason being Donald J. Trump and all of his, whatever we want to call it, his reality of whatever he's living, you know, building inclusive communities means building community and having space open in community for people who might disagree with us
Mm-hmm.
about all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And you've demonstrated how to do that so beautifully with just like talking about, we can have this community if we can talk as a community.
Mm-hmm.
But how did the two of you decide, like, we're going to take a stand in this and create an inclusive community that can invite all people in, as long as they can kind of play ball?
Yeah. I mean, I think I can imagine at this point in our lives, with all of the stories we have heard from the women that we know, I couldn't imagine not doing it. I couldn't imagine not waking up every morning and wanting to help people. And that's really, for us, what it's about, and not in a, oh, you know, we're so lucky and we want to take care of the little people, or the people who are, you know, struggling with this, or the people who are, you know, it's not about that. It's about, like, there's a woman in the community who is Latina and she has family that are struggling with immigration issues. She's personally struggling with immigration issues. We know her, we know the story behind it all. And I can't watch the news and not think about her. We have friends that are from the LGBTQ community, and every time I hear this new law or this new ban, I think about them. I see their faces. It's like, we have to do something. And we've had this conversation with you before, like, for us, it's about listening. Like, the reason I think the community is working well is that we encourage everybody to listen to each other. And it's like, you may not connect to every element of what's happening, what people are saying. Something might really not sit well with you, and might be something that you'd love to just, like, start that Facebook nasty, spiteful conversation about. But the one rule we really have is, like, you have to respect each other, and you have to listen. You have to, how can you listen to someone's story who's struggling and know them, get to know them in this space, and not care enough to want to do something?
Yeah. Nancy, is there anything you want to follow up with on that?
Yeah, I just want to say, you know, to be real, it's hard. It's a challenge. It's really hard to be inclusive when inclusivity is under attack, literally under attack.
Great point.
You know, you can't get through a day without seeing a headline about some other DEI, you know, being stripped from this or that. Like, it's really under attack. And the thing that Amy and I struggled with, we are obviously very left-leaning people, but inclusivity means everybody. And so therefore we need to also be inclusive of the people we don't agree with. And that can be very challenging. But like Amy said, the way to do that is to listen and to open your heart and find the common ground, you know. But it's challenging. It's hard.
There are days where it's really,
it's like, you just can't, it's just there in your face all the time, that inclusivity is a bad thing. Like, I lose my words.
I mean, it's very hard to have words around the dismantling of celebrating our differences. That's so much of what I'm here to do, is celebrate our differences. How cool. Like, this is a beautiful bouquet back here. It's all yellow daffodils. They look all the same. It's very pretty. Smells great. But it's also so beautiful to mix them in with bright orange blooms and roses like yours in the background. Yes, peonies and just spring colors, right? Like, diversity brings beauty and meaning and collaboration to life. And the conformity doesn't, it just breeds more conformity, and that's very boring in the long run. I don't know why people want to be really bored in the long run.
Yeah.
But I want to talk to this difficulty, right, in creating inclusive spaces, because I myself have had some people really misunderstand me and think that I'm being a quote centrist that doesn't stand for anything at times, by creating spaces to have the conversations. So I really want to speak to the difference between creating spaces to have the conversations with everybody and the sometimes necessary need to cut people out if they can't be tolerant, because there's this paradox of intolerance. Like, we have to tolerate the intolerant. No, we don't have to. So how do you approach that? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. It's tolerance. And you know, like Amy said, one of our only rules is kindness. And so I think we approach everything from that perspective. Like, if you can't be kind, then we do not want you here. I don't care what your views are, but just if you're a person who doesn't understand how to be kind, then you are definitely not our people. You know, and so whatever side of the aisle you're on, that doesn't matter. It's, you know, our community is about bringing people together, listening to each other, and helping each other, supporting each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, and I also think people weed themselves out. Part of the concept here with Nancy and I that we have is like, if somebody does something that's inappropriate, we would tell them to leave, and we have not had to do that. You know, that really has not been an issue. But there are some people that have chosen to leave, and we say what our, you know, friend Dia Bondi always tells us, which is, these are not our people. And if they don't feel comfortable, then that's fine. They can go find a space where they do feel comfortable, or they can create a space where they don't feel comfortable. We are going to have these conversations. We're not going to tell people not to post them. And what we find for the most part is people won't engage if it's something that they're really against, or really, you know, like, I think part of the challenge for like white women especially is we have a lot of women in the community who are there because they want to be socially conscious. A lot of them came from this group Red, Wine, and Blue, who it's like a women's political action group. And they don't engage as much as I thought they would. And I think it's because they're afraid to say the wrong thing.
Mm.
And so for us, it's like, that's fine. You can read and you can say it. It would be nice if you communicated more. Would love to have you more in the mix. But I think that they're afraid to like use the wrong terminology, or, you know, we've had a woman in one of our group events say like, I just don't know how to say what I want to say, so I'm afraid to say anything. And we're like, well, then this is a perfect space for you, because there are people who will just gently say, oh, I'd prefer if you use this term, or explain why that matters to them. But I think that's a big barrier for people sometimes too, is just like, they're good intentioned. And for us, it's all about the intent. Like, we all say the wrong thing, or we can't be politically correct in our knowledge. Like, our knowledge can't cover every aspect of being politically correct right now.
No.
You know, there's just so much that we need to remember. And I'm constantly, my poor boyfriend, I'm constantly like, oh no, we can't use that word anymore. No, I know you don't know that, but so I'm just going to tell you, because I don't want you to say it in front of somebody else. But we can't keep up on everything. So for me, it's about intent. Like, did you mean to say that to hurt my feelings, or did you just don't know, and now you do. So it's stuff like that I think we try and stay on top of. And the people who are too freaked out by that, or don't get it and find it reverse offensive, they weed themselves out.
Yeah. Oh, they're couple of things I want to just say here, following up. Like, the kindness being the number one rule totally makes sense. I think that is such a good way to simplify the whole like tolerance, intolerance piece. Can we be kind to one another, not scream at each other, not tell the other person they're wrong necessarily, but say, this is my experience and I'm presenting this to you instead of trying to tear you apart. And yeah, I haven't seen anything in your community of unkindness that has not been immediately like talked about, like, oh, well, this is why this might not have come across that well to people. And the piece about people not wanting to cross the lines or say the wrong thing is this pendulum swing into that like too political correct fear, where it's like so many people get like really stuck. Like, I literally can't say anything because there's a chance I'm going to mess it up and I'll be abandoned. I'll be kicked out of the community. No one will ever love me or respect me again. Like, all of these stories that are wound up in that. But that's exactly right. If we can just say, I don't know how to address this. I don't know what words to use here. Who can help me? And there are always, I get very heartbroken when I see people trying to be well-meaning get attacked, because it reinforces that. But it makes sense because, again, it's trauma, right? It's trauma responses from a lot of people. But still, we have to be able to ask to learn, and we have to know what we don't know to ask that. So, and so much of my work has been being that LGBTQIA resource to be like, I'll help you. I don't even know all the terms. There are new neo pronouns coming out all the time, and new like niche sexual terms or like sexual identity. I'm only attracted to feminine women. Like, that means I'm this. Like, there's crazy terms out there for all of these specific things. And I love it. But the average population is never going to know all of those terms. So I always say, like, talk to people and get to know what labels they want to use. And then if you need to research or ask, like, it's okay to do so. But can we get curious and listen to other people? Like, who are you? Inviting people to share themselves. So what are some of when it comes to building inclusive communities, what are some of the activities that you like to incorporate that build community?
Yeah, it's funny, as you were talking about that, one of the things that we have been talking about doing, and we really want to try to do this spring, is some kind of a roundtable about choosing your words. Like, what is the correct terminology? Try to get a bunch of women from representing different communities. What is the terminology we should be using? How do you ask the questions? How do you approach something when you don't know what words to use? And I think it would be a really, really fascinating roundtable. And I think it would be so helpful, and it would help us continue that dialogue in the community. So that is definitely something we want to do. And also our summits. We have not done one in a little while because I got sick. And then last year was just crazy catching up. I feel like it took us a whole year to catch up from me being sick, but we are going to be doing a summit this year. And those are just beautiful, where we bring the women from different communities together. And those conversations are just so spectacular. And what else, Amy? What other things are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have workshops. We have a podcast network where there's podcasts from women from diverse backgrounds. We have a television channel, a television network, Passionistas TV, where we're starting to do shows from, you're going to have a show, Melissa Bird has a show, Claudia Cordova-Rucker, Kylie Stone. There are all these women from really different backgrounds talking about whatever they want to talk about. So really interesting conversations, or just, monologues to the screen about Indigenous life, women's rights, stepping into your power, financial advice, LGBTQ issues. So I think for me, it's about lifting the voices through the different initiatives. And, one of the things that I think sets us apart, to address one of the comments you just made, is I think in a lot of communities that are trying to be inclusive, it's a couple of figureheads who are talking to everybody, telling them, okay, this is the answer to this question, and I'm giving you this information. Our community, even though Nancy and I have built it, is not about us. It's about our group of Power Passionistas, of which you are one, who are our resident experts who talk about different issues and are experts in different areas. And Nancy and I are just kind of facilitators to it all. And we're kind of the mama bears who are making sure everybody's playing nice. But, you participated in a call one day that got a little bit, it was probably the most intense conversation we've had in the sisterhood. And it was right after the election, after the inauguration. Everybody was very sensitive, and understandably so. And it got a little bit intense. And there was this moment of like, do we step in and answer these questions that are being raised, or do we let the women from the various communities speak for themselves? And we did that. We let a Black woman address a topic that was related to minority women. And we let a Latina woman speak up for her own point of view on the issues that were happening. And I think part of the reason people get so freaked out about, like, I don't know what to say, I don't know how to say it, is like, because they're not exposed to people. They're not exposed to an LGBTQ person, or they're not exposed to a Black woman, which in this time in the world is crazy to me that we've come this far and they're not, but it's true.
Yeah.
It's really true. And there might be a lot of Black women who don't know a lot of polyamorous women, and there might be a lot of polyamorous women who don't know a lot of Indigenous women. Like, we're, as much as we're trying to connect, it's hard to find each other. And so part of, I think, why the Passionistas Project is working is Nancy and I aren't jumping in and going like, well, Indigenous women feel this way, because it's not our experience. We haven't lived it. Dr. Melissa Bird is Indigenous. She speaks to that, or she brings in other people she knows from that community who can speak to that. So our mission moving forward continues to be, how do we get as many women of different backgrounds in front of each other so that they can learn from each other, and it's not filtered through us. So all the workshops are run by women from different communities. The TV shows are all about, run complete 100% run by women from those communities. Like, we do not go through a development process and look at every episode and talk about the topics, unless you want some feedback on that. But you guys speak. We're all here to listen. So I think that's, the most important thing to know about our content as we're moving forward.
Yeah, it's not a matter of like tone policing, unless it's unkind or picking what people can say. It's creating and fostering a space for minority and marginalized people to feel comfortable to speak up and share their stories. Like, that's ultimately what this is about, because gosh knows, if I just approach a situation as a white woman, if I don't factor in my queerness, I can speak up in a room, okay? But if I don't feel safe in that room to really be myself, I will pull back and hide. Like, I've been to business conferences where I'm like, ooh, this room full of very rich looking white men are not going to be okay if they find out that I'm queer. Like, you can feel the vibe, right? So creating that space for safety, because if it's safe for marginalized and minority status people, it should be safe for all women. That's intersectional feminism, people.
Right.
Like, you lift up the lowest of the low, and everybody gets all of it. They get all that benefit. Everybody wins.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So that's this cult versus community piece just keeps coming in the back of my mind. And I want to kind of circle back to that, because a cult is upheld by figureheads,
Right.
that say we are the be all end all. It all goes through us. We're the ones that get to determine this. And that's not what you all have done. You've been turning it over to your community members, asking them what they need, listening, having those one-on-one conversations. That is so freaking hard to do. because you have to be willing to take perhaps some uncomfortable feedback.
Mhm.
Right? Like in that call, I did admit to you, I was like, yeah, I was very uncomfortable there for a little
Yeah.
bit, but I'm also very pleased with how it was handled because it was handled with compassion, directness, and dignity for all involved. Right? So I'm really curious, in days like those, when things do get really uncomfortable, like how do you keep yourself from quitting and being like, screw this, we're not doing community stuff anymore. People suck. I don't want to do this.
What's wrong with it? Can't we all just get along?
That was a hard one. That was a hard day. We definitely had about a 72-hour period there where it was like, what have we gotten ourselves into? But I think, again, we came back to kindness. We came back to listening. So we made sure to follow up with every single person that was on that call individually and have a conversation with them and hear them out, and not necessarily agree with them or disagree with them, but just listen to what they had to say, explain our perspective on it, and ask them outright. Like a lot of people, we asked outright, what do you want to see us do?
Mhm.
You know, and every single one of them said, you're doing what you need to do. You don't need to change anything. You know, we were like, do we need to kick some people out? Do we need to, what do we do? And they were like, no, we need to have these conversations. So, so it ultimately, it was a very difficult thing to go through, but it ultimately was an amazing experience. And I think it's solidified that we're doing exactly what we should be doing. And we are surrounded by the people we need to help us through things like that, because all of those conversations were amazing. And we learned so much from going through that. And so ultimately, it was a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think for me on the stressful or bad days, it never fails that something happens during the course of the day that reminds me. Like yesterday, I woke up with the Monday morning like, oh,
Same.
how am I going to get through this one? And our day ended with an ask party that we co-hosted with Deb Drummond from 262. And it was like 10 women. And the concept was every woman got to ask for advice or support or something about one thing. And then every other person has to give some kind of feedback. And it was beautiful. It was part our community, part her community. And there are some crossover people in there. And I just sat back and I was just like, you know, a friend of ours who's been struggling financially and she scraped the money together, you know, the $18 to come to this, and like really scraped the money together. And I felt so badly that she was paying, and I'm like, I hope this works out. She like sold a product for $40, and it was like she made the money back. And all these other women were like, you should contact me because I can get you into this, and you should contact me because I have an idea to connect you with these people. And I just see that every day in the Passionistas Project. I see people making, because you know, we should tell the audience, like, it's social impact, but it's also business development and personal growth. And you can engage with people on one of those areas or all of those areas. It's really up to you what you gravitate toward. And we've seen women make friendships, like someone we know who just moved to a new state and town. There's another Passionista there, and they've already gone out for coffee. We've seen people make business deals. We've seen people sign up for other people's courses and have personal growth. And so to know that it's working on that level. And then I think the greatest thing was a couple of weeks ago, Nancy and I went to Portland, Oregon, and we sat with 7 of the women in person. And we've done that in New York, and we've done it a little bit in LA. And it's like to see 7 women who some knew each other a little bit, some were totally strangers when they walked in, all exchanging phone numbers, all connecting on different levels. And like women that we know need connection are feeling alone. To see them connecting with each other in person because they had met through us was like the greatest feeling. So, yeah, the days where it's like, oh, how do we handle that situation? It's pales in comparison to every single day the reward of seeing it succeeding and knowing that it's just going to continue to grow and help more and more people.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that keeps us going is each other.
Yeah.
You know, we are so lucky. We tend to have our bad days on off days. Like when Amy's down, I'm okay. When I'm down, she's good. You know, so we tend to be able to lift each other up. It's very rare that we're both down at the same time. And I think we just don't talk to each other on those days. It's like, I don't want to bring her down further. We'll talk tomorrow.
Oh.
But that sisterhood gets us through everything. And frankly, it's why we started this community, because time after time after time, we talk to women who say they wish they had what we have. And we realize that we can give them that. And so we have. So that's what gets us through, is that sisterhood. And we want to give that to everybody else, to have that community that gets you through the hard days.
We need that community to get through the hard days. And again, like, I just want to reiterate the shadow side is that it's so hard to find, because people don't know how to communicate in general, because again, it's not taught. And I have personally been in so many communities that have fallen apart because when somebody got uncomfortable and needed to give feedback, the leader, quote unquote, couldn't handle that. And so to community build, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. You have to be willing to take feedback, and you have to be willing to see the silver lining on those days that it gets hard, to persist through the rupture repair process. That is actual community. It's not actual community if you can't rupture and repair. It's just play pretend.
Yeah, and we're a sisterhood. This is a family. Like, that's how we look at it. We don't look at this as like, you know, a typical networking group, or as, you know, like, every single one of the women that we have connected with in this community, I feel personally deeply rooted in their lives. And I care about them, and Nancy cares about them. And we have good days and we have bad days, and but we're family, and family doesn't turn their back on each other. Family doesn't walk away. Family works through it. And our mother taught us that. We have 3 other siblings, and our mother taught us, your siblings are your best friends. No matter what happens, you may fight, you may, you know, be jealous, you may do this or that. At the end of the day, these are the most important people in your life. That will always be there for you, and you will always be there for them. And we are the closest siblings I know. And I love them more than any other human beings on the planet. And that's how I feel about our Passionistas sisters. I would do anything that I can in my power to make their lives better, because that's what family does.
I think the other interesting thing you were saying, you know, cult versus community. I think the other thing is that the key to what we're doing is Amy and I don't have big ego.
Yeah, you can't.
You know, we really, when we first started it, we're like, we're not going to be on camera. We're not going to let anybody see us. Early on, someone called us one day and it's like, you know, it doesn't say your names anywhere on your website. You really ought to at least mention your name somewhere. We started this as like, we are behind the scenes people. This is about the community. And over time, we realized that we had to step forward. We had to make it about us to draw people in, you know, but it's still to this day not about us. And I would be very, very happy if it gets to the point where it's so flourishing because of the women in the community doing things that we do take more of a backseat to it, you know. But I think that's part of the reason why it's definitely the reason why it's not a cult. But I think it's part of the reason why it's a successful community, is because it's not about us. We don't make it about us.
Yeah. Decentering leadership as the hierarchy, right? It's a circle, not a pyramid. Amy, I just want to bounce back to the family piece because I know so many people do not have that experience with their biological family, and to just redefine for people, right, whether it is biological or chosen family, that's exactly what we are looking for in who we call our family, is that they have our back and they love us unconditionally and they support us and cheer us on even in the bad days. Maybe especially on the bad days, with non-judgment and just openness and
a little bit of an eye roll and you move on.
Yeah, that's where, we have to be willing to look at each other's shadows and work with them to be able to navigate the discomfort more easily too. And that's part of community building, is being able to really own our own place in it, and where we struggle to show up, like you struggling to show up visibly in the beginning, right? And just showing up in our imperfection and being willing to be vulnerable with that. Yeah, like I don't know how to perfectly use your pronoun, but I would really like to. So my intention is to learn it, but I might stumble. Can we work on this, right? Like just communicating where we struggle with community so that we can be in community. So is there anything, I'm just curious if there's anything else that you want to share, whether it's about like a tip for building community, a pitfall warning for building community when it comes to people creating their inclusive communities.
I'm sorry, I'm here. Is anybody else hearing an emergency warning?
No.
My computer.
It's just you.
It's just a test.
Are you okay?
I'm fine. It sounds like he's saying it's just a test, but it's like I don't know how to turn it
The
off.
noise canceling's doing a good enough job that no, I don't hear it. But
I'm glad, because it's very distracting, and I'm like, and I don't ruin the flow of the podcast. But
you are totally fine. We're doing it live. We do this. This is like for real, because I think it's more important that we show people real humanity instead of like this polished perfection. I cut out every single thing I do. It's got to
exactly. He's almost done.
People's
He's done.
dogs like sneezing in the camera and stuff. Like
exactly.
It's all good.
We were doing someone's show the other day, and I'm like, "Is your husband whistling in the background?" She's like, "Oh no, that's the bird I'm fostering." She's like, "I can't do anything about it." And it sounded like his bird whistled through the entire thing. It was
Oh my God. I actually had a recent podcast like that. I'm pretty sure it was a bird in the background, but I didn't ask because I knew that there was nothing I could do about it.
Exactly.
But yes, so I'll give you a little breathing room to think if there's anything about tips or pitfalls. For me, it is that you have to stand for something in a community, and it is okay to exclude people to create an inclusive community. And that's really hard sometimes, because I'm like the number one inclusion, harmony, unity, band wavy person. But I understand that, again, if some people cannot tolerate others, if they are going to do violence, we literally can't let them be in the community until they sort that stuff out. And so creating inclusive community, Passionistas, for example, is for women and gender nonconforming, like trans feminine people.
Absolutely.
So there is the exclusion of that man energy,
totally,
which is necessary for you to create the kind of community you're trying to create, where these marginalized individual populations can come forward and support one another. So I think it is really important that we acknowledge, like, sometimes it's not as cut and dry as just everybody's included.
Yeah,
but that's hard.
I just had a revelation. I think it just, by you saying that about excluding the male energy, I realized that the women that are, let's just say, problematic in the community, the women who end up weeding themselves out, the women who don't necessarily fit, are the women who buy into the myth of that male energy being the way the world needs to run.
Interesting.
You know?
That makes sense.
And they're the ones that are weeding themselves out because they don't feel comfortable in our community. It's not that we're not making people feel comfortable. They don't feel comfortable because they're buying into that patriarchal myth.
Patriarchy. Yep, that's exactly right.
It'll get you every time.
I've written whole books now about my opinions on the patriarchy. So
It is interesting. I think that the ones who have weeded themselves out have been surprising to me in the fact that they weren't that engaged. And they were kind of making an assumption that we weren't being inclusive because we weren't. They were feeling like they were being targeted as not being welcome because other people had other views. And that no one was like cheerleading for their views, whereas everybody's kind of cheerleading for each other right now. Like, yes, we're behind you. Yes, we're supporting you. And no one was kind of cheerleading for the other side.
yeah.
You know? And it felt badly that people would feel like we weren't being inclusive, because you do want everybody to feel like they're safe. But for me, it's always about making sure the most marginalized, the people most in need of community feel safest first and foremost.
Mhm.
And also, I'm always just going to express my genuine personal opinion about things. I'm not going to sugarcoat how I feel to try and make someone feel better about what they may feel differently on a topic.
Yeah.
But the people that weeded themselves out kind of made this point, like, there's a community that says they're inclusive, but they're not, and they only want to hear one point of view. And if you don't have their point of view, then you're not treated inclusively in this community. And that stung. That's the first thing that's really stung, because it was like, it's hard you can't include everybody. Not everybody is going to feel like it's their space, right? They're not going to connect to it. But for someone to say that we're not being inclusive and that we're only listening to one opinion, I had to sit with that for a while.
Mhm.
So it's like, if that's true, then we need to change something. Like, that's a big, bold statement about the core of what we're trying to do. And so I sat with myself for a bit and I was like, okay, who are the people that are involved? Whose opinions am I listening to? Who am I influenced by in our community? And that's when I was like, well, I'm influenced by the women from the various, racial backgrounds that are unique to my experience. I'm, bolstered by the women from the LGBTQ community and the non-binary people. I'm connecting with the women of a certain age who are feeling like they're in this major transition in their lives and they're trying to figure stuff out. And I started to go through all of I put a face to everything I was thinking. And it was the most diverse, beautiful group of people, not only like racially or, sexual orientation, but just as human beings, like just really different, someone who had served in the army and someone who's a psychic and someone who, is an artist. And it was like, I think those are pretty diverse people from really different backgrounds who have the common goal of making lives better for each other. So if the people who don't think we're being inclusive feel like they're not included, is that more on them and what they're bringing to the conversation, or on the rest of us and how we're playing with each other?
Yeah.
And it took me a few days, and it still pops up. This happened like 6 or 7 weeks ago, and it still pops up. Like every once in a while, I'll be like, but is it, Then I go back to that place. Like, I think we have a pretty damn beautiful, inclusive group of people who are the ones I want to spend my day with.
Yeah.
And ultimately, as much as the community is not about us, we benefit from it more than anybody. So if I'm going to put all my energy into it, I'm going to put in the energy to make this group of women and non-binary people feel welcome and safe.
Yes. And that's, I mean, I stand with you.
I know,
I
and that's,
stand
we
with
love
you.
you for that.
And it is, what I think about those people, it's that paradox of intolerance again. If you're not making space for me to spout that we should be uninclusive on a global scale of certain kinds of people, that's not inclusive either, right? It's
Right.
that you have to take that stand for something in your community, and you've taken the stand for all sorts of people should be allowed to flourish, exist, live with dignity, show up authentically, have their basic needs met,
Mhm.
not be targeted for the color of their skin or their sexual orientation or their gender or their religion or any of that. So it's a hard line to stand in right now. I can't help but think of, what's happening on our government websites right now, where they're just like taking down all this historical information about women and people of color and people who have accomplished so much, because they think that inclusion means whitewashing, and that's not what it is. So thank you both so much for coming on today and sharing in this with me. I so appreciate what you're doing to build the community that you are building, and the ways that you're inspiring, other people to build community. And I hope that we'll eventually see something similar to the Passionistas Project for all genders and for men to have their spaces, because we talked very briefly. I have to say this, and every time I go live right now, because someone in the universe needs to hear me, is that our white men need to step up, and they are the ones that I don't like to use the words good and bad, because I don't believe anybody is good and bad, but the ones that are really genuinely well-meaning from the heart right now are so frozen because they don't want to say or do the wrong thing, like we were talking about earlier. So they just kind of like hide. But there are spaces for you. Like, hello, come join Living Luna's community, because we are for all genders, and we are happy to talk to you about nuances and terminology and whatever you might need support in. And if you are a woman or non-binary person, a trans feminine person, gender non-conforming, the Passionistas Project and Sisterhood is a beautiful place to come join if you are an entrepreneur or service-based person or anything like that, and you're looking for community. I'm so appreciative of all you do to lift people up. It's such an important mission, and I stand with you in it. So thank you again, Amy and Nancy.
We're so grateful. We're glad you were a Power Passionista. We love you, and we are so happy to be here today. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. So until next time, my friends, this has been another episode of The Shadow Side. Community is tough, but we can do this by getting uncomfortable together. I see you, I believe in you, and I'm cheering you on. And as always, if you need any extra support, reach out, whether to me or to my beautiful guests. Check out the Passionistas Project. All right, until next time, bye for now.
Bye.